So this is something I do before every Monster Hunter game. I never want to feel like I've wasted any or valuable materials, so I always plan out what weapons I'm going to make. Most of the time I stick to it pretty well, but it's not like it's a strict ledger for me. I find until you get to the end game, you can drive yourself into a pretty deep hole if you make whatever weapons you have available, only to realize it costs insanely rare materials later, and unfortunately doesn't even end up being good. Since I'm doing this for myself, I figured I would share it with you all. Maybe you can find it useful too. Here's the catch. I do this veteran style. No math, no testing, just pure intuition knowing my own playstyle as a guide. If you want to know what the best weapons are, you'll have to find some other YouTuber because I won't sit here and calculate it out. I use a multi-approach system to determine what weapons I'm going to initially go for, as in the end I typically end up making everything anyway. First and foremost, look at attack and elemental values, followed by sharpness. I then take bonuses such as defense or affinity buffs into consideration, and finally ease of making the weapon, something no calculator can actually tell you. I never worry about weapon slots because I feel a good armor set should be able to be universally used with any weapon non-limiting. For status weapons it's even simpler, which has the highest status and sharpness. And for all you fashion hunters, move along and never pick a weapon based on looks. Function over fashion. Here's the disclaimer. Monster Hunter Generations isn't out yet, so I'm using Tyrannical database to do my shopping. That means that there may be some translation issues, as well as a lack of weapon tree information. I'm going to do my best to not include any DLC weapons or endgame ultimate weapons, created by tickets in every upgrade. I'm also going to exclude any rust weapons here. If you find a rust weapon, just make it. They're all amazing, but more importantly, they're based on luck of finding one, so it's really not right to put it on the list. My list contains 1 to 2 top picks for each element for each weapon type. I like to give myself a little flexibility in case I'm not having any luck with monster drops. I've also got a few honorable mentions of weapons that maybe didn't make the cut here, but are definitely worthy of crafting your first round through. So let's get into it. Day's Eye is my top choice here, which is the old Corona in the past games. While it does have one of the lowest damages here, it does have the highest fire as well as best sharpness and some decent affinity to help boost that up. If you're not happy with that, you can go with Golden Radius, which is sort of its counterpart, but realistically you can't lose with any of the bottom 4 here. Painful Razor is going to be the trump here, and although it lacks in sharpness a little bit, you can easily fix that with Sword and Shield because it can sharpen almost on the fly. The Xenogray weapon, Despot's Crook Bolt, is again going to be one of the next best options. However, don't forget about Frightbane. It has insanely high attack and really decent thunder for that attack as well, although you're going to have to play with its sharpness a little bit with the set to really make it useful. High Frost Edge is stupid good and you'd be an absolute fool not to make it. It's extremely easy to make, has the highest ice as well as one of the highest damages, and yes it lacks in sharpness a little bit, but again, Sword and Shield you can sharpen on the fly. Nothing else comes close to the ice damage that High Frost Edge brings, but Sunoku Leaf is going to be a good second option. Has about the same sharpness, a little better attack, and sadly about half of the ice. Royal Ludroth Claw and Kurenai Fan are definitely the top 2 choices here. They're almost identical in my mind, with one boasting more water and the other boasting more damage, and the sharpnesses are pretty similar as well. However, Royal Ludroth Claw is probably going to be easier to make. Don't forget about Master Odyssey as well here. That's a pretty good other option, and usually is often pretty easy to make as well. Without any Joe weapons, we're a little more screwed than we normally are with all the other weapon classes. Elytrion Star is obviously going to be your best choice with extremely high sharpness dragon and everything else, but of course it's going to be very difficult to make. Chrono Sword is actually going to be a pretty decent option with decent attack, decent dragon, and although the sharpness is lacking again with Sword and Shield, you can almost sharpen on the fly, so I would go with that because it's also kind of easy to make. Another unimaginative display of weapon creativity leaves it with Struxian Demolisher, your clearly best choice for a Blast SNS. Mailing's Gadget lacks some serious sharpness here, so I would go with Death Price because it does have that white sharpness, so sharpness +2, and the second best Paralyze, as well as some moderate damage, so you can really use this as a solo and a multiplayer weapon. Lunatic Briar is going to be your best choice for multiplayer here because it does have really high poison as well as moderately okay damage and definitely one of the best sharpnesses. But it is going to be very difficult to make, requiring 2 Rathian Rubies, so Deadly Poison is going to be a pretty awesome alternative until you get those. However, if you're looking for solo, Poison Battle Axe is definitely the way you want to go. If you're sleeping, you're not concerned with damage. Plessioth Shotel is going to be your only option here. I was actually surprised with the choices I went with here. Rakdos Tabar, which is one of the easiest endgame weapons to make, also boosts one of the highest attacks at 240 and pretty decent sharpness for an SNS. It's comparable to the True Shining Blade, but it does have better sharpness, and although it does have negative 10 affinity, you can easily get rid of that as opposed to boosting the sharpness. Fighter Sword has a next best attack, but you are going to need sharpness +2 to make it useful. I would go with Assassin's Dagger or Cretaceous Sword because they're basically identical, also really easy to make, and it's a lot easier to get more attack than more sharpness.